All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Newt News Podcast. We're ready to go. We've got a loaded episode for you today. Obviously, there's going to be some Waino discussion as we're getting to the end of his illustrious career as a Cardinal. Thank goodness he got 200. That kind of justified a lot of pain this season. We'll also be talking about Sonny Gray a little bit. Obviously, some pitching. We know that the Cardinals need to add pitching this offseason. We've been banging that drum. So is everybody else. We'll do it a little bit more today. And then also, there have been some really weird injuries for the Cardinals, some lower back tightness, all sorts of stuff going on. We've now seen, I think, 10-ish Cardinals on the IL to end the season. All of their years are done. So we'll be breaking those down as well. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. I think the first thing we want to talk about today is Adam Wainwright. Josh, is there anything you think the Cardinals will do like fun to honor him down the stretch here?
Yeah, I bet. I mean, why not? Especially when you've
Yeah.
got like the most random lineup of cards of all time going out right now. I saw something that he had his batting gloves with him in San Diego. I feel like that didn't mean anything, but I'm sure when he's back home, I'd be shocked if they don't give him at least a pinch hit opportunity, if not DH for a day. Maybe they
Yeah.
do. Sandy, we talked about before. Maybe they play him at every position for a game. I don't know,
Awesome.
but they've kind of made it like a whole Waino weekend because doesn't he have like a concert on Saturday or something? So
Yeah, he's
yeah,
launching his career as a country star.
there we go. Has it been confirmed that he's going to start a game that weekend yet?
I have no
No, I
idea.
think they said
Okay.
they're still mulling it over. And I'm not sure. I
Okay.
don't know. Do you guys want him to start another game? Because he ended his last start
I
on
don't
July
know.
9.
I personally would say no. Like, I would rather not see Waino start again. I'd be fine to see him like come out of the bullpen for an inning or something, just to pitch in
Hmm.
front of Bush faithful one more time. And he'd get a huge ovation on his way out and a huge ovation on his way back. It'd be
Yeah.
fun to see him walk all the way out of the bullpen too,
Yeah.
because and that would kind of be like shades of '06,
True.
probably his most iconic moment ever. So it'd be fun to see that, like Waino making the long walk from the bullpen all the way to the mound, give the whole crowd just some time to like let the whole feeling sink in. But at the same time, like, no, I don't want to see him start. I don't want to see him maybe get shelled and give up 8 runs when he just pitched 7 scoreless, and we can end on that. Like, that's storybook ending. 207 scoreless, leave it there.
Totally agree. It'd be weird not to see him at least take the mound one more time. I wish
Yeah.
they should just waive the three batter rule and just let him go out there, throw a pitch and pull him. But if they won't, then let him get an inning. But it'd be so frustrating if it's like the last start last year where he's getting shelled by the
Yeah.
Pirates and they take him out. Like they Pirates ruined an iconic moment. So like I'd be really frustrated if the Reds just like teed off on him and then you pull off the mound. And it's like, well, you had 207 scoreless last time.
Yeah.
So
That'd be a bummer.
Yeah, and he doesn't really
we'll
pitch
see.
well against the Reds anyway, so it would be a real
Sure.
shame.
Well, and even when he does pitch well against the Reds, like I remember the complete game loss he had against them last year. Like the Cardinals just don't support him against the Reds, which makes no sense because we score on the Reds with everybody else, like Dakota Hudson on the mound. But
Hmm.
it is what it is. But yeah, I really
Yeah.
think he needs to get a plate appearance. We have to see Waino hit one more time.
Yeah,
Have
maybe
to.
it'll satisfy my need
Maybe
for pitchers hitting, and then I won't talk it all this offseason.
we've already had Alec Burleson, the two-way player this year, so might as well add Adam Wainwright to the list and
Speaking of
make
Alec
it go.
Burleson, that is such a great segue because Alec Burleson's season is over with a broken thumb, I believe, right? From sliding into third. I heard he did not
Yeah.
have the green light when he ran, which is
Oh.
almost ironic because apparently, yeah, Pop's like the most aggressive third base coach ever, too. All those bad sends at the beginning of the year, and then he doesn't give someone the green light, and yeah, whatever. But Burleson's season is over, and he joins a whole host of other Cardinals on the IL right now. That includes Dylan Carlson, Tyler O'Neill, Nolan Gorman, Brendan Donovan, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, Packy Naughton, Jojo Romero, and Steven Matz, plenty more, right? Like I'm not even naming everybody. This is just off the dome. Why are the Cardinals all of a sudden just shutting guys down? I see Arenado lower back tightness. It's like I feel like he'd normally play through that. So what behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a mix of the fact that the season's basically a wash at this point. So, like, I doubt Arenado is sitting right now if they're in the thick of a playoff race.
Yeah, for sure.
But like a lot of these injuries are kind of serious too. Like, I don't know if Gorman's playing right now, if he even if they're in the race. Burleson's thumb, obviously, you can't do
Yeah.
anything about that. O'Neill, I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't be playing. I don't care what time of year it is.
Yeah.
And I love him, but and Contreras' wrist seems like a real issue. So I'm going to keep looking, but I'm pretty sure even before this month, the Cardinals were starting to become one of the most injured teams in all baseball, which early in the season, that was kind of an argument that people were like, they're not even hurt and they're playing terrible. But now you can actually kind of look at like, for people who would have hoped they had a better second half, like now the injuries are a real, like not an excuse, but like a real reason to say like, I mean, it wasn't going to get better because you traded all your pitching away that was any good. But now your lineup is like, what is Ollie supposed to do? He's got Helsley, and that's the only arm in the bullpen I trust. And then you've got like four of your starters playing right now. The rest of it's like, I mean, I love Palacios and he could have a role next year, but he's not an everyday guy. And Kiz is playing a lot. Anyways, it's just funky.
Yeah, we saw Casey Lawrence come in for the 10th and the 11th yesterday. That was real fun. He got it done because the Padres never win extra inning games, but normally that doesn't work out too well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like who's on this team right now? It's just the least recognizable names ever, and now we're calling up Ciani to play center field and Irving Lopez. I like seeing Lopez get a chance. I saw some conversation on Twitter about this one. Lopez getting a chance makes a ton of sense. He's one of those like organizational soldiers, one of those guys that serves as depth forever. It's great to see him get a shot, kind of like a Kramer Robertson type of thing. I don't understand the Ciani move. I'm a little upset by that because there are guys I'd rather see. I don't really care. Like we got him from the Reds off of waivers. Okay. That doesn't really do anything for me. We're not going to win. It doesn't matter. We're not going to the playoffs. Let, another organizational guy get his shot. Like Koperniak. I don't understand why he's not the one who gets the chance, but I don't know.
Yeah. He was already on the 40-man, so I think that's probably played a part of it. And when they brought him in, Mosaic was kind of excited about, or he mentioned that they see him as a plus defender in center field. So that's something I think next year they'll think about. I doubt he's in the mix for the starting role, but they might see him as a fifth outfielder, fourth outfielder in that way, especially since they don't really use that 26th man very well. Like they might want a guy like that. And they were excited to see if his bat turns around. But at the same time, you're right. It's like, it's kind of weird that he's the guy getting the call when you could name 5-6 from the Memphis Mafia that have been around for a while and are knocking on the door. But they did add some names to their 40-man roster. So I'm sure they're like, there's a week left. Why would we throw a guy on our 40-man and then potentially have to jeopardize losing him in the offseason if we have to remove him? But I don't know. I see both sides. I'm at this point in the season, I'm like, I don't really care anymore. But like, if I were one of those guys, it'd be really frustrating if you've got Ciani getting up there, but Perniak can't, or Nick Dunn or whoever.
Moises Gomez, who's already on the 40-man roster. Confirmed. The Cardinals can't stand Moises Gomez because he's having another like very, very respectable, solid year. He strikes out a lot, but so do a lot of players at the major league level. I see no reason why we can't just see if his bat plays because guys have done it before. There have been plenty of guys with, spotty hit tools that get up to the big leagues and the power and the plate discipline is enough to, get the job done. So I'd love to see Gomez get a shot, but it looks like that's not going to happen this year.
Yeah.
I'm just glad we're not seeing Taylor Motter. I think he's still in the organization. Like that would be, I'm glad we're seeing other people who have more potential than that, at least.
Yeah. Could you imagine if there's a roster move? It's like Goldie goes in the IL, Taylor Motter comes up, and it's like, people lose it.
Well, see, the benefit of Taylor Motter is that he plays every single position. Right.
Yeah. True utility, man.
Supposedly, the Cardinals put him everywhere with whatever. It must be like a contagious injury bug that's going around because it is just everybody. It just stinks. So, yeah, I mean, Josh, you said it earlier, but this team just not at full strength, not at half strength anymore. It sucks to go out with such a whimper. Just what a bummy end of the season.
Yeah. I'm not like, I feel like they're, especially when this team's trying to turn it around for next year, you probably would rather finish with some good vibes, playing good baseball, translate it next year. But I'm not going to lie. I won't be mad if they have a top 4 pick or something this year. Like there's some really exciting arms coming out and they need to pick best player available. available. So like whoever the best player available is, it doesn't have to be a starter. But they're going to be in a very unique position. I don't think enough people are talking about where they're going to have a top pick in the first round, depending on what they do in free agency, a top pick in the second round. But then every round they'll have a pick that's 15, 18 spots higher than it usually would be. That's a big deal. And so I think they could really revamp this farm system even more than they already did this deadline. So that's the silver lining I see in all of this
Sure.
is like, let's go. But it's frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, because we saw the Cardinals, they really unloaded that farm system by calling up Walker early in the season. And like, it's not a bad thing to unload your farm system. You should do that. The point of the farm system is to graduate talent to the major league level. Yep. But we saw that farm system get very, very depleted. And so, I mean, so much so that at the deadline, rankings were putting the Cardinals somewhere around 20 to 23. And what I just recently saw, Bleacher Report had the Cardinals at 12. And they haven't even had the chance to draft, so it's pretty impressive. How quickly they've been able to turn this around already. Like I said at the deadline, I was all over Mozeliak masterclass. And I mean, it's just kind of proven our point here. Even if the Cardinals had bought, which people wanted them to do, clearly they would not be in the race right now.
No.
So it's great that he was able to sell. And then what we saw Sajazi, what we saw Roby do down the stretch, Kloffenstein and Robersa. I mean, talk about a guy who's flipped the script. Robersa came here, was terrible for 3 starts, and then has been unhittable since then. So very, very exciting. The Cardinals have restocked so fast. I'm excited to see what Randy Flores can do with the top pick. I think you make a great point there.
Totally. And I think too, like let alone just because usually these guys, you're expecting them to make an impact in St. Louis at some point. There's a chance that some of these guys could be used as trade bait this offseason or next deadline, where like you look at the major league position player group, you could take the exact same, like whoever you pencil in at the top of the depth chart for all of them. They don't need to add anyone. Like they could, but they don't need to add anyone to the position player group. Now they have some pitching depth too. Like that's something I can't remember the last time I went into an off season and every position I'm like, I feel good about, like, not just like, like I feel good about it. And so like even their bench too, like has really solid guys on like an Alec Burleson or maybe Sid JC next year, whoever. So they're loaded to go make moves.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they were able to trade like 2 months of injured and ineffective Jack Flaherty. And seriously, like, I know that's going to tick some Cardinals fans off because he was our organizational guy, but injured and ineffective Jack Flaherty is what we've had since 2021. And, it's not his fault, but at the same time, it sucks. They were able to trade that for 6 years of control of Prieto, of Rom, who, by the way, has been better than Flaherty since the deal. And Rom looks like, I mean, he's put together 2 really good starts in a row. Looks like he could be a very competent back-end starter. And then also Showalter, who's probably the most interesting of them in terms of ceiling. So I don't know. It's impressive. Injured Harrison Bader last year. Pretty stupendous stuff by Mozeliak.
Yeah, and you look at their top 10 prospects now, they have 5 arms in the top 10, which is a big deal. Like they've been really thin there. We haven't even talked about like guys they had internally, like Chase Davis, they just drafted Victor Scott. I mean, you still have Graceffo, Jerpy, Bernal, like Travis Honeyman, and you just have so many names right now that I think people, I would hope we're going to be excited about their offseason, but like this is one where I think they can actually revamp the rotation now. But then by the time the deadline comes around as well, they can make some significant upgrades that they don't usually make because they have to hold on to some of that depth to replace guys who are going to be leaving. Like again, outside of Goldschmidt, this in 2024 offseason, all their in Tyler O'Neill, who had doubts back next year, all their guys are under control past 2025. So they have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, one more thing before we switch to talking about pitching. I mean, I think this is a really spicy take. I think a lot of people are going to think I'm stupid for saying it, but I really think if you lined up, throw pitching out the window for a second. If you just looked at the depth available to every single team positionally, I think the Cardinals are right up there with the class of baseball.
Yeah.
Like besides maybe the Braves, maybe the Dodgers, but I don't know. There are not a lot of teams that could go pound for pound with the amount of depth and the amount of talent the Cardinals have in their position player core, because other teams just can't stack guys like Newt, Donovan, Gorman, Carlson, O'Neill. They don't have that many guys who are all capable of starting on a major league roster. And then you talk about the younger guys, Sajazi, Prieto, Victor Scott. It's just super impressive what they've done. Now they just need to add some pitching and start winning some championships.
Amen.
That's gonna get
Speaking
some
of adding some,
All-Star takes out
what was
there.
that?
We're gonna get some
Oh,
7 All-Star comments to that one, but I like it. I like it.
uh,
Anyway, we can move on and talk about Sonny Gray. I know, Josh, you had a tweet go out the other day that you wanted Sonny Gray more than any other pitcher on the market. So got some spicy replies to that. I think someone compared him to Mike Leake, which is just completely wrong. But
Hi.
yeah,
so bad.
so
Mm.
what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
and I mean, I think like let me take you down my train of thought. This is really relative. Like, first of all, I mean, you look at the state of pitching around baseball in general. Like, almost every contender is going into the off. Like, the Dodgers are probably going to throw Bobby Miller game one, and then after that, they have no idea who's going to be starting the rotation because Kershaw's hurt. Lance Lynn's been terrible. You look at the Braves. Max Fried just went down. Like, state of starting pitching is rough right now. And then you look and there's a Sonny Gray who's been the model of consistency I mean, as consistent as a pitcher can be in today's league over the last few years. And like, sure, if Max Fried or Spencer Strider was available in the open market, go after them, but they're not. And who's the top guys available? It's Aaron Nola, who has regressed a lot this year. I think if the Cardinals got him, I wouldn't be freaking out about it, but I would have my hesitations. You have a Yamamoto, but I really feel like a large market team is probably going to outbid the Cardinals for him. So we'll see about that. You have Blake Snell, but like, talk about a guy who's never consistent. He's had 2 elite years where he won the Cy Young, and then he might win it again this year. And then otherwise, he's not bad, but he's not a top of the rotation guy. So you just look at the names and there's no clear guy, but then you come back to Sonny Gray and he's probably gonna get a 2, 3, at max 4 years, but I doubt that year deal, probably in the 20 to $23 million range. Like, bang for your buck. I already really like Sonny Gray as your like second, the guy you spend the second most amount of cash on, but like, if the Cardinals walk away and Sonny Gray is their opening day starter next year, this dude is third. Is it third in all of ERA of all baseball right now? Like, he's good. And people are like, he doesn't pitch enough innings. Like, he's like Blake Snell. Like, people don't complain about Blake Snell going 6. Like, I think he's 18th in innings this year, Sonny Gray. Like, he's fine. And again, like, so Tim Halkala, I think it's his last name, replied to one of my tweets about Sonny Gray and compared him to Aaron Nola, who's like people would see as an ace. Sonny Gray is a better B-WAR and ERA plus in 2023. If you go the last 3 years, Sonny Gray is a better B-WAR and ERA plus than Aaron Nola. You do the last 5 years, so since 2019, same deal. He's a better B-WAR and ERA plus. I think Gray is just a symptom of a guy who pitched in Cincinnati. He pitched in Oakland. He pitched in Minnesota, and no one cares about those markets. So no one watches him. And the one time he was on a prime stage, he went to the Yankees, and he's admittedly said like things went bad. He had to reinvent himself, figure it out. And he put up like a Cy Young worthy season in Cincinnati, which is like one of the hardest places to pitch in all of baseball. So like, I just see a bunch of like, every pitcher has red flags, every pitcher has risk, but he's the guy that feels the safest in a way with a lot of them. And I just really like the idea of it. So what do you guys think?
I love Sonny Gray. I'm all over Sonny Gray. I've always thought he's one of the most underrated players in the league ever since he was in Oakland, right? It was him and Mania seemed like they were going to be really good in Oakland for a long time. Obviously that didn't pan out. Oakland deals into New York. And like you said, he disappointed New York. It is what it is. Gray's admitted that. In Cincinnati, like you said, he reinvents himself. I think he should have gotten far more Cy Young attention in 2019. He ended up finishing 7th, I want to say. He deserved a look, in my opinion. I probably would have voted 3rd for him, I think. DeGrom was going to win it. But whatever the case, Sonny Gray has been really good. I've got his baseball reference page pulled up here. And you know, he's an 11-year veteran. How many times do you think in his entire career has he posted an ERA plus below 100? How many times has he actually not been a very good pitcher?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I feel like it's like once, maybe twice.
Yeah, twice. He's only posted an ERA plus below 112 twice for that matter. So pretty much every single year, Sonny Gray is at the very worst a 3. And if he's not a 3, he's a 1 or a 2. Sonny Gray does everything right. Also, he's already thrown 180 innings this year. So to those people that talk about innings, what do you want from a guy? In today's league, it's almost impossible to throw more than 220 innings. Nobody does it unless you're Sandy Alcantara. In fact, 200 is pretty rare. Mikolas hitting it last year was kind of a big deal. Most guys don't even approach that. So Gray's going to get really close. He's probably got 2 more starts. Like, we're going to see him crack 190, which in my opinion is very, very impressive. You just don't see guys do that anymore. I see no reason the Cardinals wouldn't sign him. And like you said, this is a guy that might only cost you 3 years of control. Are you kidding me? You have to be all in on this guy.
Yeah.
And here's why. I think this is a little bit more of an organizational point. But in my opinion, you look around the teams that are winning, the Braves doing a lot of winning, the Dodgers do a lot of winning, the Rays do a lot of winning, the Mariners look like they'll probably do a lot of winning, the Orioles definitely will. These teams have homegrown starting talent, and the Cardinals don't have that right now. But that talent is concentrated in the lower levels. You have a bunch of guys, and one of them's going to work out. Okay. It's not going to be this thing where nobody works. You're going to have a Jack Flaherty in there who pans out. You're going to have a Carlos Martinez, and maybe they don't work forever, but you're going to have guys, at least among Ian Bedell, Cooper Jerpy, Tink Hence, Takoa Roby. Somebody's going to be good. Hopefully you get 2 or 3 like actual solid major league pitchers. And so if that's the case, you just need these guys to be a bridge to that. You don't need to sign 3 guys long-term to be your rotation all the way through the 2020s.
Yep.
You just need guys who are going to be your rotation until 2025 or 2026, when your young talent that you hopefully develop between now and then is ready to take over. That's the blueprint for winning.
Yeah, I love it. Because your point there too is like none of those guys are going to be like maybe back half of 2024, some of those names, but most of the ones that we really have expectations for 2025 and beyond. And so you really got to cover 2024's innings, and then you start to have an overlap of the generations where you have Mikolas in the last year of his deal, Gray or whoever it is, like probably 2 arms that are hopefully substantial in that time frame. Steven Matz is probably maybe moved to the bullpen or that kind of thing. And obviously you need arms to cover for injuries. You look around baseball, again, every team is struggling with injuries right now. But I love that. I think people are like the Cardinals are paying for their past inability to develop pitching and acquire it. They now have it, but it takes time. And so I think in a few years we won't have the same angst, but it's hard because it's still there. So how do you cover the in-between? And people don't really want to hear it, but it's true. Like, you have to develop your own pitching. And so these have to be supplemental moves that can cover the now. And also it gives me a little bit less fear going into those bigger deals where you probably don't need Gray to be your number 1 for all 3 years. Like, hopefully there's a guy who's rising to the top by that point. So if he does fade a little bit, or Arenado does fade a little bit, like, sure, they're an expensive 3, but like, again, that's free agency. If you have to bring in outside pitching, you're not going to get it cheap. So that's the why you have to develop it.
Yeah, I really don't like this market at all. Starting pitching wise, Aaron Nola, you said he's regressed a lot. Blake Snell is really wildly inconsistent. You've actually changed my tune a little bit on Sonny Gray. I've compared him to Robbie Ray in the past. I'm looking at Robbie Ray's numbers right now, and for like the 4 years before his Cy Young season in 2021, he was below average, I think, for 3 years in a row. So just inconsistent. But yeah, looking at Sonny Gray's numbers, definitely someone that I think we should be interested in. I don't want to pay too much for him, but I know in this year's market, it's probably going to be tough. Yamamoto is probably still my go-to guy, but I don't know. We're not even we haven't scouted him at all. I think we're more interested in, I think, Imanaga, the lesser tier Japanese starter, who's I think going to be 29, 30 next year. So I mean, if we're not in on Yamamoto, I think Sonny Gray is probably the best bet.
Yeah, there's some concerns about Sonny Gray that we'll bring up to play devil's advocate that I've seen other people talk about. His home run to fly ball rate this year is insanely low. Like, it is 5.3%. The next low of his career is 9%. So he's like, there's stuff there where it's like, if he gives up more home runs next year, he's going to regress. His expected ERA is really high. His xFIP is a lot higher. So like, really high is in like 3.7. So like, still a good pitcher. But just not as good as this year. But like, also, like, if you're signing Sonny Gray, he's not going to be as good as he was this year. Like, you're hoping for a guy who hovers around a 3 ERA and his pitches like maybe a low end 1, high end 2, but like, you hope he can do that too. So I'd rather get a guy who I kind of can bank on between a 3.5 ERA year to year than a guy who could give me a low 2s like Snell, but then the next year give me a high 4s. Like, I like the certainty for the Cardinals rotation right now, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're the Cardinals, right? You've built your organization around defense for the last decade. And granted, they're trying to move away from that because it didn't work this year. But I don't think it worked. I don't think it failed this year because the pitchers didn't induce the ground balls they wanted them to induce. I've seen so many singles squeak through. I think it regressed because the defense wasn't as good as it should have been.
Yeah.
Now you have Mason Wynn up the middle. And for some reason, Paul DeYoung just seemed worse defensively this year. Gorman made some big strides this year. Walker is so much better. Like Jordan Walker in the outfield today, so different than Jordan Walker in the outfield back in April.
Yep.
Hopefully you're not going to have all the injuries you dealt with. And gosh, Arenado in the second half has looked like Arenado. In the first half, I have no idea what it was. He's making errors, errant throws, just was not himself. So it doesn't make a lot of sense when I see all these fans, getting all upset about XFIP and whatever. Cardinal starters have traditionally overperformed. And it's not like a negligible sample. It's a big sample of guys doing that because they've had a good defense and they play in a pitcher's park, right? You're worried about Sonny Gray giving up a ton of fly balls turn into home runs. I mean, we play at Busch Stadium.
Yeah.
It's pretty tough to hit there. In case no one's noticed, it's pretty deep. So I'm all in on Gray. I see no reason why the Cardinals shouldn't be interested in him, especially because if you can get him on that shorter term deal. Because I know that if they sign Nola, and you'll probably have to give him 6 or 7 years, just like Rodon, I know that someday in 2028, you're going to have a bunch of Cardinals fans screaming about how awful the Nola signing was when they demanded that they get Amber Snell. And they're going to be like, oh, because of Aaron Nola, we can't give so-and-so a chance in the rotation because Nola has to be in there. And it'll make me so upset because those are the same people that want him so bad right now.
Totally. Looking at, I was like, I'm curious what the Twins ballpark factor is compared to the Cardinals. They're 17th in baseball. So they're more of a pitcher's park at 100. Cardinals rank 20th at 99. So it's basically the same type of park to pitch into. So that plays in Sonny Gray's favor. And again, he pitched in Great American Ballpark and was really good. So any guy who can do that, I trust in.
Yeah.
When you talk real quick about Jordan Walker's play yesterday when he went over the wall and then made that throw out I don't know, the Padres catcher. I don't know his name, but he gunned him at second, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was incredible. He's made, like Sandy said, he's just made so many strides. No one expects him to be a Gold Glover anytime soon, but going from maybe the worst outfielder in all of baseball to a league average or above league average guy is a huge improvement.
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, you're seeing the athleticism. Jordan Walker, we've been saying, is a generational baseball talent in a lot of ways. People were comparing him to Albert Pujols as a prospect. They're saying we haven't seen another Cardinals prospect this young do these things. And so, he deserves all the props in the world, but also to the people that said it was never going to happen, that's a stupid take. Jordan Walker has an incredibly high baseball IQ. If you've ever heard one of his interviews, it's evident, right? He's a student of the game. He's a scholar. So I don't understand how people didn't see this coming. He's very athletic. It was going to happen. It just needed to take time. He'd only played 40 games in the outfield before this season. So, and still, he made his debut this year at 20 years old. So, yeah, very good to see. Very encouraging.
Well, we just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Lids. They're a great company where you can get a bunch of different gear for all types of sports teams, but especially the Cardinals. Obviously, if you're listening to the Newt News podcast here. And one shirt that I found on there recently that I think is awesome is a Mark McGwire. It's just it's an image of him from an in-game thing. It takes the whole shirt. This year's the 25th anniversary of the 98 home run chase. So it's a very timely item on their shop, but they also have all the jerseys, hats, all the other accessories. So you can get our affiliated link in the podcast description, in the YouTube description, or on our link trees and stuff as well. So go on there. It's great stuff. But one more topic we wanted to hit Cardinals related here is Miles Mikolas, which, Andrew, I know you're concerned about him. I'm concerned about him as well. It's just not looked great the second half. What are your thoughts on the Mikolas situation?
Yeah, so Mikolas against the Brewers the other day, not known for their great offense, went 5 innings, gave up 9 hits, 5 earned runs, 6 runs in total, only struck out 4 and raised his season ERA to 4.95. And that's really not what you want to see when he's the guy out of the 3, Flaherty, Montgomery, and Mikolas that you chose to extend right when the season started. Mikolas is getting up there in age. I think we have him for 2 more years. And if he keeps regressing, we've seen what Father Time does to aging starting pitchers this year with Waino. And I'm concerned about Mikolas's viability for future seasons. We've seen him be a little bit inconsistent in the past, but I think this is the worst we've seen it so far.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that too. Like there's an argument that Miles is kind of like an on again, off again pitcher. Like his first year in St. Louis, he was a top 6 Cy Young guy and All-Star. Then 2019, he regressed to a over 4 ERA and 3.2 starts. Dealt with some injuries, but then 2022 was really good, All-Star again. And then obviously this year his ERA is almost 5. If you look at the second half, it's gotten worse. So like that's concerning that it was even like, oh, like he's been rebounding. He's got an ERA of over 6 during the second half, and he just doesn't look the same. And so hopefully, I mean, I don't know if I want to say hopefully that he's gassed, because like you think of last year, like toward the end of the season, he started to falter off a little bit too. He had a good postseason start, but you don't want guys to be playing their worst baseball in September. Like we saw Goldie last year. Like that's not a good sign for a team that wants to have playoff aspirations. But I think the silver lining of his deal is it's 2 more years left and it's 16 million a year, which isn't terrible in this market. Like he just has to pitch a little bit better, and that's probably what you're paying a 4 or 5 starter. But the worry is that he continues to regress, and this has been a year where he's been got beaten by those blue pits that he typically would get out. So maybe the defense improves next year. That helps him out a lot. I don't know, but right now I'd say, like, what would you rate your level of concern on Mikolas at? Like 1 to 10, 10, you're freaking out. 1, you're like, he's fine.
Probably like a 6 right now. I had Mikolas in our starting pitching rankings below Matt's. I had Matt's as our 3 and Mikolas as our 4, because Matt's showed some really, really promising signs before he got injured. And I think if he comes back and works this offseason on getting better and comes back fully healthy next year, I don't have as many concerns with Matt's. Mikolas has shown that he's healthy. He's gotten really unlucky this year. We saw, as you said, a lot of those blue pits were falling, especially earlier in the season. I know he had a really, really bad start to his season, and then put it back together before the All-Star break. But it seems like he's having more of the same that he had at the start of the season. So I don't know if it's just bad luck. Hopefully it is, and hopefully he has another really good year next year. But right now, I'm not very confident in it.
Yeah, I'd probably put mine as a 5 or 6 as well. And I think that's a really interesting, like, that you put Mikolas as your 4 on your starting pitching rankings, because I do think, like, obviously Matt's injury concerns like make him unreliable in that way. But like when he's been, like, it'd be interesting to talk about on a pod in the future. But if you go back and look at Matt's 2022 with the Cardinals, he had 2 blow up starts that destroyed his ERA, but otherwise he was giving you 5 innings, 3 or less runs every time out. Like that's pretty good production. And so if Mikolas is your 4, like that's the kind of a low bar that he has to clear. So I think he can get over it. And I think the problem the Cardinals ran into this year is they didn't have top end pitching. So like their number 1 at the beginning of the year, there's just no one pitching like above a number 4 starter at best. Most of them were pitching like 5s. Then Montgomery came on, but that was after the season was kind of already lost. But then outside of Montgomery, you didn't have anyone. So if you have 2 guys at the top of your rotation you can depend on, and then you don't have like a black hole at number 5 where it's Waino giving up 10 runs, or it's Woodford being terrible or whatever, like that, like you don't need as much from a Mikolas. You don't need as much from a Matz anymore. So I'd say, again, it's a 5 or 6 because they didn't have to extend him. So the fact that they did it and then this is what they're getting, it's like, well, the Cardinals kind of have a history of this, of paying a guy when they don't need to pay them yet, and then they kind of fall off. So hopefully it's not another one of those. But Mikolas is a great clubhouse guy too, and he seems like a guy who's going to work really hard this offseason to figure it out. So I want to give up on him, but I'm concerned.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think we found Thompson this season. He had a couple of rough outings in recent weeks, but I trust him to come into a role if Mikolas or Matz goes down as sort of a 3, 4, 5 guy. But I really hope that Mikolas can go back to being like a 2 or a 3 type starter that we've seen in years past. Yeah. Kind of just ease the load off of potential signings that might go wrong, like Nola or Snell being not as effective as we've mentioned. But just a lot of question marks in the starting rotation next year.
Mm-hmm. And I think like we all have PTSD from this year being the worst from pitching, but also like 2020, 2019, 2021, 2022, like every deadline, the Cardinals were trying to patch the rotation together again. So like, I think fans want to see something completely different and want to see steady pitching. But like, this isn't 2013 anymore. This isn't 2009 anymore. Like, rotations are way more volatile these days. And I think it was 101 ESPN. They were talking about there's not a single contender that has a pitcher that doesn't have a guy with a 5 ERA in the rotation right now. Like, the expectations for a back end of the rotation guy is just a lot different than today's is. So like, even if Thompson has to be in there, like what he's shown so far, he's a perfectly capable number 5 starter, and he's the upside to be a guy who can strike out 8 or 9 in a game and give you innings. So like, I think I'm less I kind of go back and forth between how concerned I am about this rotation. Obviously, they have to make the moves, but like, assuming they make the moves, is actually going to be good enough. And I think with how elite this offense is, I just think people are fair to say the problems are bigger than the pitching this year, but I think it's very clear that the pitching was such a mess that it impacted every other area of the game so negatively. If you come in next year and guys don't feel like they have to score 10 runs every game to win, and you've got a guy who can shut people down for 6-7 innings, like that just is a totally different feel in the clubhouse. So I think Mikolas can be part of the solution, but I just think it's a good thing the Cardinals don't need him to be a 1 or 2 like they did this year.
Yeah, for sure. We just need to hope that they live up to their word and bring in the pitching they need instead of saying like, I don't know.
True.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe this is a TikTok moment or something. I don't know. I don't know if you listen to the Bill Simmons podcast ever, but like, Kyle, turn the camera on. Like, this is my Kyle, turn the camera on moment. But like, people need to remember, I think Mozeliak is taking accountability right now. I think Ollie Marmol is taking accountability. The people we're not hearing from are the DeWitts, and they're the people that matter. And if the DeWitts are not willing to open up the pocketbook, Mozeliak's made mistakes. It's true. The front office has made mistakes, but if this really they really want to turn this around, I think they can. They just need the DeWitts to finally open the pocketbooks. I think it's going to happen because they've never seen a season this bad, and they've never seen the stadium like empty like this before. I think they're going to make change, but if they don't, I think it's a moment you look at the front, or you don't. It could be the front office, but I think it's more of an ownership thing, and that's where I think my biggest question is right now. I think Mozeliak wants to do it. I think he's embarrassed. I think Ollie wants them to do it. I think he's embarrassed. Are the DeWitts embarrassed enough to actually open up the pocketbooks? We'll see.
I mean, the worst season we've ever seen combined with the most exciting free agent we've ever seen. But it's okay. I'll talk about that later.
You slid it in.
Yeah.
I will say, like, you think about the last time they even had a losing season, they fired Walt Jocketty, who constructed some of the greatest Cardinal teams, like that 04 team, and they won the World Series in 06. Like, the DeWitts, like, to their credit, like, when things go bad, they make changes. Just things haven't gone bad in a long time. So, like, they were pretty complacent. So we'll see. Maybe it means Ohtani. Who knows?
That would be nice. I did make a pitch the other day to you guys that we shouldn't compete until 25, because I looked at some of the free agent stars that are going to be available then, and those guys are a lot more exciting. You got Corbin Burns, Woodruff, Walker Buehler. I think Garrett Cole has an opt-out, which he might exercise in this market. Just a lot more interesting guys that will be your number 1 instead of Nola and Snell, who are very questionable.
Yeah, we should definitely dive more into that in the future, because I think my pushback would be you're killing another year of Arenado and Goldschmidt's prime, which is tough. But I do think that's an argument to maybe like make one big signing this offseason and then not patch together, but like not make huge commitments to the rest of the rotation. Maybe trade for like, he's my placeholder guy, but a Tyler Glass now who can just cover you for a year, and then you make another big splash next offseason. I could totally see that as a good scenario, because I'd rather have Max Fried long term or Corbin Burns than Aaron Nola. But then again, like, I'm sure every front office is looking at next year's free agency being like, that's the one. So
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Maybe sign a DH, go full Phillies, just all line up, no pitching, and then 2025
works for them
together.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I think this pretty much covers the gambit of all the things Cardinals right now. We've got a fun episode coming up next time where we'll talk about some end of the season awards and maybe some not some good awards that we're going to give out to some people. I'm sure we'll get to recap the finalization of the season and start previewing the off season. So thanks for joining us again. Another episode of New News. Again, use that affiliated link for lids if you want to get some cool merch. Somebody send us what you grabbed. Maybe we'll get some ourselves. It was a good episode. So thanks to Andrew as always and Sandy, and we'll catch you guys next time.